Hi, my name is Tanja. I am the Chief Energy Officer for The Alchemic Way. Super excited to be on the online prosperity show, exploring ways for real estate and property professionals to be the preferred service provider, transforming the communities they live, work, and play in.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. Here we dish out insights hotter than freshly brewed coffee. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we're in for a treat. We've got a guest who's not just a mind bender, but a jungle dweller too. Get ready to be amazed, amused, and thoroughly inspired, because today we've got the one and only Tanja Lee in the hot seat. Now strap in, folks, because this promises to be one of the best episodes we've had in a while. Now, Tanja, welcome to the show.
My cheeks are sore already. That's the best intro ever. Thank you, Prosper. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, we haven't even started yet, and I'm now thirsty for all those southern accents you've been throwing behind the scenes, and and it's a good thing it's almost lunchtime now, right? So, Tanja, tell us a little bit about yourself and what's the magic behind the alchemic that you've created then.
Yeah, the alchemic way. So first of all, Prosper, thank you so much for the opportunity to be a contribution to your community. We'll fast track to, who I am and why we do what we do. So I'm a leadership mindset specialist. I'm an NLP coach and trainer. I'm the Chief Energy Officer of The Alchemic Way, together with my husband, Dr. Matt, who's the Chief Operations Officer. And The Alchemic Way is a personal development business 100% devoted to empowering real estate and property professionals around the world to live and lead healthy, happy lives and fulfill their potential in the least amount of time. However, as we were talking offline, whilst also really improving the client experience of listing and selling and leasing and renting, and shape-shifting the way the public perceives this profession. And, I'm also a mum of two. I've got two adult women who keep me on my toes. We reside in 5 acres of bush in country Victoria, just out of Daylesford. And I'm just a geek, much like you, Prosper, around what constitutes the fulfillment of excellent human existence. Like, how can we squeeze as much liquid gold out of this gift called life? And I morphed my way into real estate purely as an average consumer that was really underwhelmed with the process of selling my own family home. And it had me really inquire into, why do some agents fly and others flop when it comes to listing and selling property? Because as we were talking off air, this is not a small gig. This is a significant transaction that can transform someone's life. And there's usually a lot of stress surrounding it. And I just saw an opportunity to potentially bring, at the time, 35 years experience working across the corporate, private, retail, government sectors in old-fashioned customer service and leadership, some insight, some tools, and some strategies to help real estate leaders and teams be the most preferred and referred professionals in their community.
Absolutely, because these professionals we're talking about, they're the ones that open up chances and opportunities for people, because a home is usually one of those most fundamental places that anyone would ever think of acquiring or owning. We're all brought up in a home. So if you're going to be the conduit of that particular thing, you need to hold it with both arms. But before we jump into that whole realm of real estate and how you actually got started, helping these professionals to do more and better for their customers. How did you maybe stumble upon the world of leadership and mindset specialization? Because this thing alone is then what birthed the actual need for real estate, service, and what actually keeps the fire burning, because this this is something that I've noticed of you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate the question because it gives me an opportunity to reflect on something that I'm really passionate about. And it does go way back, Prosper, to, I'm an only child. And as a kid, I remember being 5 or 6 and getting all my toys in a semicircle and, practicing holding a book in my little hands, like this, like teachers did. And I didn't know what I was teaching, but I used to play. I saw myself as a teacher, and I would do roll call, and I would stick little envelopes with library cards in the back of books and teach things. And that morphed into, as I became a teenager, I would pretend to be interviewing people for very important jobs. But at the and this is going to be potentially left of center a little, but I know you're into consciousness and spirituality and a higher vibration, and I believe that business is an opportunity to raise consciousness. A more esoteric answer is, at the age of 16, I astral traveled for the first time, which is where your spirit leaves your body. And you become aware of, well, I became aware of my physical body in bed, my spirit that was floating up sat on the veranda of our house and was patting our German Shepherd and just feeling more feelings than I've ever felt before. And then I was also the observer watching these things. And after a period of time, to keep a long story short, when I came back into my body, I bawled my eyes out because it scared the living bejesus out of me because I didn't know what just happened. But it piqued a curiosity of, I've never felt anything like that. What was that? So at 16, I started my journey into looking at consciousness and spirituality and what did all of that mean, and started studying that. And also at the same time, I got a very clear message, a very clear download that I was someone on the planet that would inspire people to believe in themselves. And that was my life purpose. At the age of 16 and a half, I did 2 weeks work experience with what was then considered the epitome of business training in a retail sense, which was Maya. And I did a 12-month cadetship to train it to be a leader. And at the age of 19, there I was leading 400 people. Back then, this is many moons ago, my friend, a $93 million business across 4 floors that had 34 individual businesses. And I spent 10 years there. And the whole leadership journey, which I'm super passionate about, began then because my philosophy of leadership is it is a privilege, not a right. I subscribe to the servanthood type of leadership. So for me, our people in our teams are our clients. And I see big mistakes in organizations and corporations and even small businesses, Prosper, where we bypass our people and we treat the customer's always right. I believe as leaders, when we treat our workforce like the life source of our business, and when they feel like their dreams are fulfilled inside the marrow of our bones, and that's why we wake up every day, you've got a petri dish for happiness, which is great for retention and great for recruitment. So I just deep dived into what constitutes great leadership. I had a lot of amazing training. And from there, I kind of started my career, and I had the privilege of being, part of the marketing team and events production team of the city of Melbourne. So I worked on 111 major events in the city, and I've had a pretty amazing ride in the corporate, private, retail, government sector. So leadership was always big for me as a young girl. Your question around mindset was also big because in my study and in my training, there was a clear correlation between how our thoughts influence our beliefs, how our beliefs influence our behaviors, and how behaviors produce the results we have or don't have. And there were things that were obvious, that success left clues, as the quote says. And I just became curious around what constitutes success, not just in profit, but in purpose, in fulfillment, in happiness, in growth and love, and things beyond just the dollar at the end of the day.
Fantastic. I quite like that all of this is not something that you read in a textbook, or you had to walk across some calls at a conference and you thought, this is what I'm about, you see, because that experience in and of itself at 16 is somewhat of a rite of passage.
Yeah, it was a calling, and it was a lightning bolt. It wasn't just like, hey, do you fit? It was like a very clear directive. And I tend to live my life that way. Like, if you are open and you live a life of service, you being meaning, to give this context, like, I really do choose for my life to be of service, to elevate, not deflate. And so I ask for guidance around that. I'm not a religious person per se. I would say I'm more spiritual. And I lose myself in service, and therefore I get a lot of downloads. However, I will add to that, where I did learn about leadership was also, Prosper, in what not to do. By example, I watched a lot of leaders who got it wrong and were leading through fear-based methodologies unconsciously, but fear-based versus, fortune-based. And I mean fortune by where your people are lit up and they would work for you if you weren't there. Not, in my experience, there was one leader I worked with at Maya, when she came down the escalators, her people saw her and they ran and looked busy because they were scared. I don't want to ever be that leader that, my presence scares people into action. I want them to lose themselves in service because it's in their DNA and we are part of a collective, purpose. So I learned a lot by what not to do. And I saw the impacts on the people on the floor. And the reason I left the organization after 10 years, so I had long service leave at 26, was I felt that the executive leaders of the brand had lost touch with what mattered to the consumer and the people. And I could no longer proudly wear the brand anymore because I didn't align with and didn't agree with the strategies for profitability over, taking care of people. And I don't say that to be disrespectful to the brand today. I just felt like sometimes short-term strategies create a lot of long-term pain. And I wasn't the only person that felt that way. So I learned a lot by what not to do.
I can only imagine, because in life, we're here to live, we're here to learn, and we're here to contribute. So in order for us to live our best lives, we need to learn either from learned experience or from, like you say, watching other people and what not to do. And then once we have got those lessons, we want to send the elevator down and help others too. And this is the service that you are now passing and embarking on, with other people there. Now, just walk us through, how you then transformed from this, leadership in real estate to then wanting to work with those, especially in the property realm.
Yeah, so I had, as I mentioned before, 35 years working across, retail, government, private sectors. And it was back in, I think it was 2014, looking to sell our family home at the time. So I was an average consumer. And, it was time for a change, and we were looking to have a significant change in location, same state, but just different suburb. And I thought, okay, well, I was a peak performance coach for entrepreneurs at the time. I was working with business owners in a myriad of different businesses. I didn't have a niche, but I was looking for one. And anyway, so as an average consumer, I interviewed 3 agents. And in the experience of being the customer or the vendor, to use real estate terms, And also, just to come back to your mindset piece, I've always been fascinated in what constitutes positive thinking and how that produces great results. So I was also studying NLP and the art of human excellence and peak performance strategies. So that's also something I'm ridiculously passionate about. So there I was, an average consumer, interviewed 3 agents, and really was I can't switch off my business mind. I'm hardwired for it. So I can walk into a business and see who's making money and who's not by a myriad of metrics. And it was very obvious to me, as a business coach, which agents were successful and which weren't, and what was missing. And it had me, Prosper, inquire into why do some agents fly and others flop when it comes to the fundamentals of connection, communication, and contribution. And these are the 3 values in our business. How can I deeply connect with you? How can I authentically communicate? And how can I be a bold contribution so I add incredible value to your life? And so for us, that's the values we live, breathe, and lead by. So I'm always filtering my experience as a consumer through those 3 things. And 2 agents epically failed, and the final agent exceeded. And there were some fundamentals that he and his team did prior, during, and post the conversation that actually had us choose him within 10 to 15 minutes after, Prosper, get this, after having a connection with an agent for a year. So we had conversation with an agent for a year. We were one of those vendors that we're not ready, we're thinking about it. And he did a great job staying sticky with us and connecting everything. Where are you guys at? Where you call, and we're like, yeah, not ready yet. And when I told him that, look, yeah, we're ready to go, but it's been a year since we started speaking. We're going to bring in 2 other agents and see what their perspective is. Here's where he started to lose credibility with us. As soon as I told him, Prosper, that we were going to interview other agents, his face dropped and he was disappointed and triggered. Now, rightly so, because we had given him all the signals that it was his gig. However, that immediately told me that he was attached to the outcome and he thought he'd won the business before we gave it to him. And so it was like, oh, okay. But we felt a little loyalty to him because he'd been with us for a year. But if you're an agent listening to this conversation, I would ask you to consider to yourself, how do you go from being in a relationship with a vendor for a year, losing that opportunity to a stranger within 15 minutes? And that's maybe something we can unpack. So after that experience, I thought, what maybe real estate is a place where I can put my energy and bring some of my experience. And if I flip the coin back to the spiritual component and getting downloads, during that time that we were selling our property, I was standing in the kitchen, I was doing the dishes, we had a skylight in the kitchen, and I got this very clear message: call such and such brand. And I was like, okay. And I let it go. 2 weeks later, I'm driving the car. The voice says, I said, call such and such brand, which is a real estate brand. And I was like, okay. And I thought to myself, well, it was around the same time. I don't really know anyone in that brand. Who do I know that may? I rang a friend and he said, oh, yeah, I know the owners. You're going to love them. Long story short, I had a conversation with the CEO of this national brand, and and I did some research, and within 3 months there I was facilitating a one-day workshop for 52 people in their business. So it was interesting. I came about real estate from a consumer's perspective, looking at the gaps and greatness of service and where could I be of service. At the same time, being told to go down this path without knowing really why. I spent 4 months researching, talking to leaders around what are the biggest challenges they face in the industry. It became very clear that most leaders in real estate and property can spend up to 90% of their time working across the people, productivity, and performance issues. This then stops them from implementing their strategies for growth. So it's hindering their market share expansion. And I thought, I can help here. I reckon I can help. And, now here at 2024, it's my 9th year being of service. And I feel like, Prosper, I am just tying up my shoelaces, coming out of the change room and ready to go out on the track. I'm not even warm into the difference we can make.
Oh, absolutely. And congratulations for you sporting that, because just listening to your story, you wanted somebody who had the empathy of really respecting, first of all, what that home meant for you. This is the place where you were receiving all these messages. This is the place you grew, your girls that you mentioned earlier on.
Family,
This is, yeah, and this is also a place that you would have built, through the years at Maya and all that retail time. So obviously there is an emotional attachment to a property like this. So if somebody, no matter if we've known them for life or for a year, they don't hold that depth of respect we put to our property, then I don't think they deserve our business. So you saw this guy in 15 minutes. And what is it about, say, a real estate agent that really got onto you so that people can see it as well, right? Or the real estate agents can start working on that, because as you would know, we don't see the air that we breathe, and neither can see the water that they swim in. So what was it in that 15 minutes that literally got you to drop a year's worth of relationship and go for this mystical
mystical being in real estate? It is look, it is such an important distinction, because time equals money, and in any business, but particularly in real estate, especially if you're a commission-based agent, you have to generate everything. You have to generate the client, you have to generate the house, you have to generate the marketing funds, you have to generate the photography and put the ad online on the portals. Then you have to generate the interest and generate people at the open homes. So you have to be a master creator. And so for me, whilst I chose this particular agent within 15 minutes, and let an agent go that we'd been in communication with for a year, it really did begin 3 to 4 days prior with this. So and this is not new. And by the way, anything I say here, and if you're in the industry and you're hearing it, it's not new, but notice whether the information has been applied, therefore utilized or not. So this was my experience. 4 days before, we received a pre-list kit. Nothing new, many people do it. But in this kit, it was very personalized, and there happened to be a couple of cards for complimentary coffee that happened to be in our favorite local cafe. I'm a woman of synchronicity. I like signs. And so for us, that was like, oh, it's our favorite cafe. That's nice. Also from an NLP or neuro-linguistic programming perspective, which is just the relationship between thoughts, beliefs, actions, outcomes. The law of reciprocity is if you give first, you're more likely to receive. Now, whether this is a strategy, I don't really think that I'm that dumb that a couple of free coffees is going to have me automatically give over $1 million house to sell. But it was nice to receive something first. And so that's the law of reciprocity. We are hardwired. It's like if you go to a market and someone hands you a piece of cheese. I don't know about you, but I feel like I got to buy the cheese before I walk past the bread stall. So give before you get. The other thing, when this particular agent, before he came over, his team member, there was a congruency between his team member and the agent. So the way they presented, the way they spoke, their friendliness, that was very congruent. When this other agent came in, I call him Switzerland, meaning I could not feel him or his agenda at all. The other two agents, when they were called in, I could feel them kind of pushing the agenda, them not letting us answer the questions they were asking, them kind of forwarding the game to what they wanted. Agent C, who successfully got the business, I couldn't feel him, meaning we could show up in his presence. So he was deeply present. He sat down and he had his compendium and all of his listing kit stuff. And I don't know if this was conscious or unconscious, but I'm trained to observe the unconscious. And he just pushed it aside and he leant in and he said, what would you guys love to see happen here today? So that body language, because from an NLP perspective, Prosper, communication, consider, is 7% words, 38% tonality, and 55% physiology. So the fact that he pushed the sail to the side, leant into the conversation, and asked us what we'd love, rather than go, here's the strategy, showed us that what our needs were paramount. He was masterful at what I call eliciting our values. So reverse engineering our needs and then speaking to our needs in order of priority. And this is something we train agents to do in our training, which is called It's Rapport That Opens More Doors, how to build trust and land more listings. He did all of that beautifully. So he reverse engineered his responses based on our order of priority of what we'd value. And he stayed present the whole time. He let us finish our responses. And he let us lead the way. And when it came time to then share how he would fulfill our why, he demonstrated mastery. He amplified his message, but with visual cues, because great communicators know that some receive information auditorially, some, from an auditory perspective, some are more visual. It's like if you're a sales agent and you're at a listing consultation. By the way, behind the scenes, we call them consultations, not presentations, because as a vendor, I don't want to be sold to. I don't want jazz hands. I don't want you to present to me. I want you to consult with me. I want to have a conversation of what's possible. He did this beautifully. He didn't sell to me. He didn't say, this is my award and this is us in the paper and this is how fabulous I am. He didn't speak about himself and his awards and accolades at all. He didn't feel like he needed to pitch his persona. He curated our needs and got them in order and then spoke to them in order. So when he did that, he then amplified his communication with visual tools. And one example was, and many agents do this, again, it's not rocket science, but he had a calendar and he said, look, so we are here, based on where your house is, we could literally get it ready to put on the market here. Our average days on market are about 14 days. So we could see, if we chose him and made a decision today, within maybe 18 days, 20 days. So at least before the end of that page, that one calendar page, our house could be sold. And that was very attractive to us. So he was masterful at communicating across different modalities. Another thing that a really great communicator or rapport builder does, Prosper, is typically, and I'm being gender specific, and I understand now that there's it's very fluid and very malleable. However, we human beings are hardwired to think and make decisions in different ways. And typically speaking, generally speaking, that kind of contradicts itself. Generally speaking, men make decisions, or masculine-dominated people make decisions through thought, and females tend to make decisions, or feminine-oriented human beings make decisions by feelings. As an agent, if you're at a listing consultation, if you've got a couple in front of you, you could increase your rapport building by asking the female, tell me, Tanja, how do you feel about where we're going with this conversation? Or how do you feel about the process? And you could say, Prosper, what do you think about that approach? And you're going to activate our decision-making ability swifter and get our truth more effectively. He did that. So there's many, many nuances that he did, but at the end of the day, I would summarize it with, he was Switzerland. I couldn't feel him. And in the absence of his ego, our desires could emerge. And he was masterful at illuminating them and speaking to them in order, and then articulating how he and his team could be of service to the fulfillment of it in the least amount of time.
Fantastic. And I like how you went with this, and how all of these things emanate from rapport, which is basically him being of service and actually wanting to be a part of the transaction, of the actual sell, not just giving you a transaction at the end of the day. But would you not say this was your reticular activated system working, predicated on the fact that if we mention the color red right now, all the things you're going to be seeing from now on are the color red. And, it's just something that is inbuilt within people, that now that you know what to look out for, it made it easy for you to spot all the things, and that drew you a lot more to this agent than to the other agent. The reason why I'm asking this question here, Tanja, so many people wouldn't be able to have seen and articulate what you saw, but it all just happens seamlessly, all right? But with your training,
sure, but I'm trained.
Expertise, could that have played an effect?
100%. And it's such a great question. And I hope not only real estate professionals listen and watch this conversation, but those that are looking to potentially list and sell their home, because the vendors and buyers, rental providers and renters, are way more savvy than they used to be, Prosper. And they typically complete a digital interview before they have a human being into their home. And so they're way more savvy. They know what they're looking for. However, I do believe when you are giving permission for someone to be responsible for converting your asset into dollars so you can progress in your life, which is it's a privilege, not a right, you must also be prepared and know what to look for. And so it's really critical to make sure that you, as the vendor who's looking to sell your home or investment property, have your own selection criteria, have your own values really identified. For some people, typically people want the highest value, they want it sold in the least amount of time, and they want it to be stress-free. But if you as an agent don't ask the questions on what's important in the sale of your home and what matters to you, you might miss the fact that I might drop 10 grand on the price because I need to get out sooner because I've been relocated to Canberra and I have a new job to start and my kids have got to get into the new school. So equally, it's important as a vendor to be clear about what kind of person do you want to be responsible for generating the next chapter in your life by virtue of selling your home. And you can also pretty much assume that who they are with you in the listing consultation, how they treat you, how they walk around the home, how they communicate about your property, is a slice of insight into what they're likely to be like in the open homes or at your auction. So a little tip, obviously, for agents, please make sure you showcase authentically how you're going to potentially sell this property if you get the privilege to do so, by when you walk in and you're, as you would know, matching and mirroring a potential client, walking at their pace, talking at their pace, breathing at their pace to build rapport, which, by the way, rapport just equals resonance. Do we feel on the same level? When you're walking around their home, don't keep things in your head. Say, oh, wow, Prosper, I love these high ceilings. Look at all this natural light that's coming through. Wow, I bet that fireplace creates a beautiful ambiance in winter. That alpha, let them know the hero moments, because you're showcasing what you'll highlight to be, the gifts of this beautiful residence. But equally, vendors, you got to know what you're looking for. So establish what's important to you up before you then bring people in.
I like that, because how you do anything is how you do everything. And
Yes.
if you're going to be excited and enthusiastic about showcasing the house, you're only passing on that enthusiasm to the future buyer of the property, and the vendor would like to see that. Now, this is a lot for a lot of people to grasp in the one day, because half of the time, real estate agents, they maybe get their license, then pass by a shop where they buy a suit, and then walk past the car dealership and get the latest car, and then they now start going out and, like you said, generating all the things that they need to do, generating the house, generating the marketing and things of that nature. What would be the best way that folks can get in touch with you if they're eager to tap into your fountain of knowledge?
Into the fountain of knowledge. Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to share that. So it's really easy. You can just head to all the W's and then The Alchemic Way, which is TheAlchemicWay. Alchemic just means transformation. We like to turn lower vibrations, limiting belief into positive beliefs and empowered beliefs. So you can connect and serve more people. So The Alchemic Way, you can book a complimentary discovery session. If you're a leader and you want to empower your team, we speak at industry events, we do training programs and workshops, we do one-on-one coaching. Our podcast is coming up or may have been launched if you're listening to this. And also we're pretty active on Instagram. So if you head to the.alchemic.way, you can DM us there and it'll be either myself or Matt that will respond. And we'd love to connect and find out more. And we really want real estate professionals to flourish and grow. But what we know is coming from a self-centric orientation versus a service-centric orientation, you may still get there. It's just going to take you a longer time. If you are calling people to convert before connecting, you're going to come across as a salesperson rather than a service person. And we think that this is the biggest shift that needs to happen. Plus, you also need to have a constitution of courage. And you got to know how to rise resilient in this industry that changes all the time, because you're going to get rejected every single day and told no. And if you take that personally, you're only going to be catapulted into survival, which will be counterintuitive to authentic connection. So we're here to help and empower people to fulfill their dreams, but whilst also giving the client an extraordinary experience. So they retain you and refer you in the future, and you become the most preferred in your community.
I like that. And I'll definitely put all those links in the show notes below so that people can actually get started on this journey. Because at the end of the day, when you're a real estate agent, you're literally holding and handling one of the major transactions that happens in anyone's entire life. And as we know here in Australia, very few people go past the second property, mark, or the third property. And so that transaction only happens once. And that will be the only sort of, field that they have when it comes to that. I was telling you about our own experience with a real estate agent. Around here, we had to sell our previous property to get into this particular property. And all he was worried about was to find out if we were the right people that were going to give him money by the next weekend. You know what I mean? Didn't ask where we were coming from, what we were bringing to the table, and how everything was going to happen. And at the end of the day, they would have missed out on two pieces of commission, but it was just because it was during COVID. We didn't have that much of a choice. Plus, we really, really loved the house, because when people come in and buy a property, there's so much emotion that goes into it. It's the family that they're going to be growing in there. It's where they're going to be working from for a lot of people and things of that nature. And I think Maslow, the
hierarchy of needs.
Yes, his hierarchy of needs has shelter as one of the first things that a lot of people need. So when we are out there as real estate agents, like what Tanja is saying, we literally need to hold these people with utmost love and respect. Okay, so if anything that would have come through, I'm noticing here, Tanja, that the reason why you gravitated towards the customer side of things, this is what you've always done. So this is just an extension. When you were working in Maya, you were not worried about the higher ups. You were worried about the leaders that were handling the customers. So how important is that, especially for directors of property agents, to make sure that their real estate agents are literally hand holding their future customers?
It's everything, Prosper. Our energy either elevates or deflates. And for me, lighthouse leaders are the ones that shine bright even when the waters are stormy, even where the pathway doesn't feel clear. And if you let service be the fuel to keep your lantern aflame, rather than go into survival. That's the path that will lead the way, I believe, the most effectively. You don't believe the message unless you believe the messenger, and your people will either thrive, or, let alone survive, let alone leave under your leadership. And I just subscribe to the fact that servanthood leadership is where it's at. It's tricky for real estate leaders because most of them are straddling two worlds of being on the tools and then on the business. Most principals are the biggest revenue generator for the business. And in the research I did with CoreLogic RP data in 2017, only 23% of real estate leaders across Australia and New Zealand had any leadership training. So they have the courage to get the business and the bricks and mortar and put in the furniture and the CRM system and the phone. And then they get these things called people and they don't know what to do. And most leaders, and this could be maybe a conversation for another time, but most leaders would rather be liked than lead. So they don't have those courageous conversations. They struggle holding their people accountable. They don't performance manage because that will potentially hinder the currency of connection. The cost of that to business is extraordinary because typically the biggest expense item in any P&L is labor costs. So there are many businesses, real estate especially, where they may be transacting, but they're not profitable because their costs are more than their revenue. But yeah, that's a whole other conversation. But for me, it's all about, being of service. And whether you're a real estate leader, a BDM, a PM, property manager, or agent, if we can lose ourselves in service of others, the money will come. If you're in survival mentality and trying to get your needs met through others, people will feel where you're coming from. And you may still get there. It just won't be a great experience for either of you. And if I was to ask you, Prosper, would you use that agent again? And would you refer them that you used? What would you say?
You see, at the end of the day, I've always wished and hoped that agents would not aim for the handover of the keys on at the end of the deal. I wish agents would actually work to be invited to housewarming parties. I think I was telling you this earlier on.
Yeah.
If that becomes a KPI, what that does,
Woo! I love that.
You're like the midwife that birth this this property, this piece of wealth that people are now holding in their possession, right? So if they would actually work towards being invited to these events, because we invite our friends and our relatives and maybe our neighbors, just so that we're being welcomed into the neighborhood. And guess what? The question we're always asked at those events: how did you do this? How did this happen? And it just so happens that you are the blue suit or the blue jacket that's in the corner entertaining or helping me entertain my guests. Because
I love that.
Yeah.
That KPI. And Prosper, let me ask you, did you invite your agent to the housewarming?
If I knew his name, I would.
So the person that helped you sell your house and helped you buy your house, you don't even know their name?
If I knew his name, I would know where to send the invitation card. So that's how much of a transaction it was. And the person got 2 commissions from us.
That's blown my mind. I love this piece. If your KPI as a real estate agent is that you get invited to the housewarming,
yes,
and we were talking off air, what happens in a housewarming? You can have a nice glass of wine or a cold beer or a green tea in a house with people. What do people live in? Houses. And so, it's like you're talking about the process, and then you've got an opportunity to be a room full of people and connect, but your agent wasn't there because you don't even remember their name. We have some work to do, my friend, in this industry. So thank you so much for the opportunity to highlight a few little recipes for success. We've got a lot in our kit bag, but we've got some work to do.
Fantastic. Well, I really enjoyed talking to you today. Now, if you would just leave us with a nugget of wisdom, and the next real estate agent that's going to be watching this, maybe they're on their, they're waiting for the house to be open for an open house, or they're waiting to speak to their next vendor, or maybe a mantra for the road, to just really spark or ignite our journey towards, this. What would you say to this real estate agent whose next conversation is probably going to be changing somebody's life, for which it will?
Yeah, it's a great question. I want to preface my answer by saying we're having this conversation to illuminate best practice and not perpetuate the anti-agent conversation, right? Not anti-aging, anti-agent conversation. So I want all agents and leaders of the industry to really know where Prosper and I are coming from. Is we want agents and the agencies to win. That's why we're illuminating what works and what doesn't. To answer your question, I would just say, make like Mother Teresa, lose yourself in service of others, and the money will come. Shift your focus from self to service, the money will come. And if you need a hand on how, we got you on the how. But just shift your focus from self to service.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because the more you make it about the other person, the more they will get to know, like, and trust you. And guess what happens? People do business with those they know, like, and trust. And it doesn't take a year to be known, liked, and trust. Like what Tanja has mentioned, in 15 minutes, you could actually make a whole big difference. And that could represent, the massive change that could happen either for yourself and for the client involved. Now,
and that becomes your red car. You said it earlier. When you start looking for a red car, you see them everywhere. If you're looking for yourself, you're just going to see your reflection in every mirror. If you are looking for ways to be of service, your subconscious mind is going to find the red cars of contribution to your community. And that is a mindset shift.
Oh, fantastic. You just reminded me of, what they do with the bulls in Spain. They show them a red flag and then they're saying that is what you're going to be after. And
yeah,
the bull is just going to be hell-bent on looking for that red spot. So you find your own red spots in property there. Now, Tanja, I can't thank you enough for this amazing episode here. And I would love to have you back on the show so we can actually talk on different topics, because I think today was just a taster of what
a little tangent taster. It would be my privilege. Thank you, Prosper, and thank you for the platform that you create to contribute to community and help people rise and thrive. So it's one thing to think it, it's another thing to do it. So I'm really grateful to be here.
Absolutely. And there you have it, folks. A whirlwind journey through the enchanting realm of Tanja Lee. But hey, the adventure doesn't stop here. If you're craving more wisdom, laughter, and goosebumps, just hit that replay button and dive back and listen to this magic, because it was magical. And I'm going to be putting all the links so that you can connect with Tanja, especially if you're a real estate agent or you're a director or a property leader and you really want to make a difference, to the customers you're going to be serving, because they will keep coming back for more. And just don't forget to subscribe for a regular dose of enlightenment and inspiration, because you never know what you're going to come across on this channel. But until next time, help me thank Tanja for spending this time with us today. And as she has promised, she will be back.